could be happening World War III. In Iran itself, there are diaspora of the Indian people working there, more than 11 or 12,000 people living. But when the war happens, people are very, very concerned. Can it be Shebonil? Can anyone think they will surrender and say, here is all the Iranian nuclear sites, hand over to you, I unconditionally surrender. Prime Minister Modi echoed, this is not an era of war, it is an era of development. Let's work for the poor, for the regional security.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Mirror Now podcast. And joining me on the podcast is Dhruva Kumar. He is a very renowned personality in Scotland and he is a member of the parliament also. Welcome to the podcast, Dhruva Kumar ji.
Pranam, namaskar. Thanks for having me again.
Thank you, Dhruva ji. So, Dhruva ji, coming directly to the point, we have, for the past, if we say around 3 to 4 years, we have witnessed that the world is in absolute turmoil. First, we had the Russia-Ukraine altercation, and now we have this great unrest in the Middle East. We have seen that what is the situation right now in the Middle East, the kind of altercation between Iran and Israel. It has now come to the fore. First, it was Iran just fighting, some of the proxies over there, be it Hamas, be it Hezbollah, and other organizations. But now it is now become a very direct conflict between Iran and Israel. And taking the current situation in point, I just first want to get your insight about how do you witness this kind of situation that we are facing right now on the global front?
The situation, the world crisis, which is heading towards the war zone, and I think it won't be wrong to say there might be possibility or could be happening World War III. If that happens or not, but both countries, they have their military powers, they have their interventions. There are some religious lines also involved into it. As you rightly said, geopolitics, and on this geopolitics, it seems to be including the very recently, a couple of days ago, G7 meetings drawn into it, and the world reactions is coming in. So it is a very grave and concerning situation. Can you imagine the people living in there, the normal ordinary people, either in Iran or Israel? They have to live in bomb shelters, the kids, the schools, the day-to-day normal life, just going ahead and out with the houses. Then you see at the state level, country is locked. Because that's the Middle East. I mean, the Middle East in Iran, if you look at Iran and Israel, all the airspace is being very, very dangerous. Now, as you know, Chahabar port in Iran, that supplies from Iran nearly 9% of the oil import to India and around the world. And oil prices has gone up again. As you rightly mentioned, when the Russia and Ukraine war happened, Europe was the first one to bear the brunt of the oil and gas prices. Now it has become the global, the instability due to the war is just going ahead, which is affecting normal day-to-day life, state level, international level. In the interest of India is also a very, very grave situation, because in both countries, maybe some people might not know, there are lots of Indian diaspora live in the care sectors, in the hospital sectors, in education sectors. In Iran itself, there are diaspora of the Indian people working there, more than 11 or 12,000 people living. In Israel, number is higher, more than 38,000 Indian people living in there. So in this geographical conflict, there is no peace at this moment. You don't know what's going to happen. Of course, there is a nuclear threat. A nuclear site, as you and every viewer may have seen, they have been attacked around it. And I believe that Iran nuclear site is not into the chain reaction. It means the leak of the nuclear bioproducts. When the chain reaction happens, I don't think it has been hit in that one. But when the war happens, people are very, very concerned. Can it be Shebonil, or can it be what happened is very dreadful event in Japan in those days? Right. So it is very concerning. No matter what angle you see, the impact of Middle East, oil and gas, religious line, there are some nuclear conflict, and they're trying to do trade corridor has been sabotaged, and again damages is happening across the country, energy disruptions is happening, people working there, their life is all way around now, and we look at overall where it is heading to, where
Right.
is resolution, and that's where that America, France, United Kingdom, Germany, recently happened in Canada, and some of the countries are clearly saying de-escalation has to happen.
All of these global powers have condemned the kind of escalation that has happened, but they have also asked Iran to, not pursue the nuclear way. But on that end, Iran has been steadfast. They said that they will be pursuing it. So, what, according to you, what could be a middle ground that Israel and Iran could come to the table and have a conversation? Because by the body language and by the narrative that has been that is being set across the world, is that Israel is not is not going to back down, and it's only US that can persuade Iran and Israel to come to the table and have a conversation over there.
We're talking about nuclear dimension.
Right.
Israel claims it strikes set back Iran nuclear program, and that has it set it back? Will Iran stop? Will they denounce? And world will say now that the kind of the mass destruction weapon or the nuclear site is being closed. We talk about IAEA, International Agency for Energy, Atomic Energy Association, basically international, that confirmed limited damage to the deeply buried Fordo facility that is in Iran.
Right.
And that severe centrifuge damage risking radiology contamination. So that there is already ongoing risk. Matter is, at this moment, I don't see this conflict where it originated to stop Iran, to stop their nuclear facility, will cease or stop. I think there is a more provocation has happened, and the Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, they are going ahead and they are preparing on that. Russian involvement, China involvement through the different backdoor. US has not declared the war, and they have demanded Iran's unconditional surrender. So it simply means if you're asking a country when they're going through the war on unconditional surrender, Iranian people and Supreme Leader, which is the right, left, center at this moment, can anyone think they will surrender and say, here is all the Iranian nuclear sites, hand over to you, I unconditionally surrender. This is what it has been said from the most powerful man on the planet, Mr. Trump.
Right.
Do you think this is going to happen? No. The entire instability, either it is economical, political, the world is getting impacted, security, and all the regional fallouts, regional fallouts is not around only the Middle East, is all associating countries, but unfortunately, humanitarian crisis and panic in Tehran or Tel Aviv has triggered mass evacuations. And on the bordering countries, like you look at this bordering country of the Iran, Tehran, the bordering country is Pakistan, they've already sealed their borders with Iran. With Israel, there's again Hamas on one side, Israel is going on there. Immediate risk is completely unbated strikes could draw the US into direct conflict. Bombers, refueling, tankers are positioned regionally. So I don't see for even a second they will unconditionally surrender as demanded by US President.
Right, Dhruvaj. And of course, this point, as we discussed earlier in the podcast, that the only solution that comes through it is like coming down to the table and having a discussion. And this brings me to another point that a few days ago you yourself in the Scottish Parliament discussed the ethos of Mahatma Gandhi and the ethos of non-violence and peace in the Parliament. In today's scenario, where we are sitting right now, from where we are viewing this whole situation, how much important it is for a dialogue to happen, how much important it is for the peace to prevail for the betterment of for a global betterment.
The peace and de-escalation of the entire matter must happen. The country must intervene to stop this war where nuclear threat is absolutely hanging on the head of the nations and the people. India's legacy for non-violence, advocating for the peace and the find through the diplomacy is India's legacy has been. And that legacy also can provide a solution that let's come, sit on the table, talk the differences and find a middle ground. That middle ground, as you very proudly said, the Gandhian principle we talked about into the Scottish Parliament. Gandhian principle at this moment, as you can see, there is no alternative to the war. War into the war, warheads, weapons, skylock, missiles, drones, entire technology, and country making money out of that. That is what a suffering and humanitarian crisis is going on. So again, on this non-violence against preemption, that contrast in Israel-Iran strikes, and that state with Gandhi belief in truthful resistance. At this moment, that resistance has to happen from the both sides. They have to look who is ultimately suffering, common people, a state, next generation coming in. So what is the solution? Who can mediate that? And India has legacy, can leverage G20, SCO, entire the SCO and G20 to champion ceasefire, echoing this is not an era for war, which Modi itself said. Prime Minister Modi echoed, this is not an era of war, it is an era of development. Let's work for the poor, for the regional security, energy security, and talk about basically the key message. What key message we want to send to the world? There has to be families for a strategic debate. Can poor survive? Can India, mediate into this? And of course, India can, because India is only country placed in the whole thing. Can say peaceful way, non-violence way is the only way which India has legacy and we can help. And in the whole heart is Gandhian philosophies are there.
Right. Dhruvaji, one more thing. So, the situation is happening right now, and we saw that in the G7 summit, China did not participate in. But coming a few days, there would be a BRICS summit. Brazil, Russia, China, India, and South Africa. These countries will be meeting in Brazil. Could there be a possibility that India could spearhead this situation and bring this to the attention of Russia and China to kind of de-escalate the situation between Iran and Israel?
I would expect a country and states like China and Russia, which Russia is already involved in parallel war going with Ukraine. Right. China trade war is going around. China might continue with a rhetorical support for Iran and diplomatic obstruction of US and Israel. There is a very high possibility, but actions remains constrained by self-interest of the China that will directly obstruction of the US and Israel diplomatic and economically. So looking into that, any shift would require direct threat to core assets. And core assets we're talking about are the Hormuz blockade and the atomic sabotage.
Well, Dhruvaji, on that note, thank you very much for joining me on the Mirror Now podcast.
Thank you so much thanks Mirror for having me and all your listeners. I hope you will enjoy it and we'll see you back again. Thank you.
If you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to Mirror Now.